Hi, Leo, and welcome to your February 2024 horoscope. In February, almost all of the planets are infected in one way or another. So, no matter if you're somebody that's more affected by Mars transits or Pluto transits or Jupiter transits, almost all of us are going to have one day in this very short month where we're feeling a bit funky or a bit intense. But let's get into what you can expect day to day during February. On February 6th, the South Node and the North Node are being squared by Venus and trined and sextiled by the Sun. So for you, Leo, Venus is in your 6th house, the Sun is in your 7th, and the nodes are in your 3rd and 9th house. So for everybody, for another year, we are reimagining how we set boundaries. This is what the nodal story in Aries is bringing for us. But on this day specifically, your ego might be especially driving this part of you that wants to set boundaries and make sure nobody steps on your toes. But at the same time, you know that your relationships are important to you and that you cannot do things alone, that we're humans existing here on Earth with other humans. So it's going to be an interesting day to try and find a balance. On the 7th of February, it's also quite a busy day. There's actually 3 different transits happening on this day. The Sun is squaring Uranus, Venus is trining Uranus, and Mars is sextiling Neptune. With the beautiful aspect between Mars and Neptune, it might feel on this day that any actions you're taking around your habits and your routine feel really aligned, and they feel in a way inspired from above. There might be actions that you perhaps haven't taken before, or you have, but they just never felt so perfectly aligned and in sync with you. And these actions that you're taking might appear a bit weird to others because we have Uranus as a part of the conversation this day. Others might see the actions you're taking and be like, okay, that's a bit weird and different, and maybe they don't understand it. And the beautiful thing is those close to you know and love what you're doing because they know that it fits with you and your values. And it's for the betterment of yourself and those around you. But those that don't understand you, those that are a bit farther away from you, not as close to you, might start seeing you as an outsider based on these new actions that you're now taking. On the 9th of February, there's a new moon in Aquarius in your 7th house. So Pluto entered your 7th house in January 21st to be exact. So there might have been something happening on the 20th or 21st that has triggered you around your relationships. Take a note of what that was because during this new moon, you're able to start new. Pluto's going to be in your 7th house for 20 years. So you're going to be traveling through the dark parts of your relationships, the dark parts of you in relationships. And in that sense, there's no need to solve anything yet. At the beginning of this transit, a lot of us are just sort of experiencing, observing, letting it all come in and make itself clear. But with this new moon in Aquarius, if you notice something happening on the 20th or the 21st, and you felt like, okay, this is something that I want to do different next time, this is something that I want to improve, then during this new moon, it's an amazing time to start doing that and implementing those changes. On the 12th of February, Venus sextiles Neptune. Venus is in your 6th house and Neptune in your 8th. So you have been learning all about your 6th house with Pluto there for a while now, Leo, for about 15 years. And now that it has officially transferred and entered your 7th house, you have learned a lot and On this day with Venus sextiling Neptune, just as Venus is also about to leave Capricorn, I really see this as a day where you are allowed to integrate everything that you've learned. A day where you allow yourself to take inspired action and show up in a way that feels really aligned to the way you want to show up in the world. On the 13th of February, Mars enters your 7th house, and as it does that, it conjuncts Pluto. Pluto together with Mars is quite powerful, quite intense, and depending on which house it's in, can also lead to burnout because you become very motivated and can do sort of like feats that you've never been able to do before. For you, Leo, though, it's entering your 7th house, so if I could give a word of caution is to make sure you direct that energy into something productive around your relationships, not to get into petty fights or not to overly concern yourself with things that won't actually matter in 5 years. 3 days later, Venus also enters your 7th house and conjuncts Pluto. So with Venus in your 7th house, you are really focused on your relationships and you're really valuing them. They're really sort of on the forefront of your pleasure. They bring you a lot of pleasure. But because Venus is conjunct Pluto, it might be that also your relationships are quite triggering at this time. Relationships can bring out sometimes the worst parts of ourselves because it's a really intimate relationship where we get really close with the other person. So remember, with Pluto, the story has just begun in your 7th house. There's no need to solve anything. I would advise for both of those days, February 13th and 16th, to take notes, and just allow yourself to become aware of what the lessons are there for you. It's no need to integrate them yet. We have a whole 15 years to do so. And Venus moves quite fast through the zodiac as well. So eventually, in about a year time, is going to come and conjunct Pluto again, giving you a second chance to play through that same story and perhaps do something differently. On the 19th of February, the Sun enters Pisces, or your 8th house. So this is the last zodiac of the year. In March, on March 20th, we are going to enter the new astrology year because we are starting again a new cycle with the first zodiac, which is Aries. So even though sort of the new year has already begun, I do recommend that you use this time as a sort of wrapping up of the last astrological year and really reflect on what do you want to let go of in the upcoming year. Especially for you, the Sun is in the last zodiac in the 8th house. So take a look at anything you want to let go of in terms of the way you show up in the world, any fears you might have around the dark parts of ourselves. See if you can let go of any fears you might have around being vulnerable. The fact that when you open up to others, you are giving them also an opportunity to hurt you if they so desire. Take a look if you want to let go of any interesting attitudes you have around the dark parts of ourselves, whether hiding them or being really open around them. Basically, all of the hidden things that we don't talk about with others. On the 21st of February, Venus and Mars become conjunct, also in your 7th house. So there's a lot of 7th house emphasis for you, Leo, this month, if you haven't realized yet. This is a day of a lot of passion and a lot of emotion. And because Venus and Mars, just a couple of days earlier, both hit Pluto as they came into your 7th house, I do see this day as another opportunity, maybe another trigger, at perhaps the same story. Any triggers that you might have around your relationships, they might sort of become apparent again on this day. On the 24th of February, there's a full moon in Virgo in your second house. During this full moon, Venus is going to square Jupiter. Venus in your seventh house, squaring Jupiter in your 10th house. The sun is shining a light on any things you've been unclear about regarding your money. You might have felt a bit of unclarity, you're not sure what to do in terms of your resources, your money, and this full moon might give you a sort of insight out of nowhere. And this might make you feel at ease. It might make you feel like, whew, you can exhale, take a breath, relax. But because we have a tense aspect between Venus and Jupiter, this shows that you might have a tendency to sort of overextend yourself or overindulge in your favorite pleasures. And it makes sense. Things are finally more clear, you're optimistic, you can take a breath of fresh air, and maybe you want to celebrate, you want to have fun with it. I would just advise, as a word of caution on this day, just make sure you don't go overboard with your fun. Just a couple of days later, on the 26th of February, Mars also squares Jupiter. Mars, our planet of action, and Jupiter, our planet of optimism, can mean that you are making impulsive actions. You see an opportunity and you think it's amazing and you want to take it right then and there. Of course, I want to encourage you to take all the actions you want to take around your relationship. This is occurring in your seventh house after all. However, I would advise to just wait a couple of days, reassess the situation, and see if that action still makes sense a couple of days later, still looks just as amazing as it did before. On the 28th of February, the Sun is conjunct Saturn in your 8th house. You've had Saturn in your 8th house now for almost a year, which is perhaps putting a damper on all of the parts of life which are hidden. Perhaps you feel like you have responsibility to pay off your debt. It feels like you have a responsibility to death and the fact that we all are going to die. Perhaps you feel all of a sudden the immense pressure of being vulnerable with others and how they can hurt you. And now that Saturn is conjunct the Sun on this day, you might especially feel like all of these responsibilities are really putting a damper on your spirit and you feel quite pessimistic and like there's no hope. I want to share with you that there is hope. Saturn is a planet that wants us to work hard, that doesn't want us to give up the fight, wants us to show up day by day, and by the end does reward our hard work. And as a beautiful sort of message from the universe, we actually close off the month the same way we started it, with a conversation between Venus and the nodes. We started off the month with Venus squaring the nodes, and we finish off the month with Venus trining and sextiling the nodes. Because this is pretty much the same aspect, it's just a more easier one. It's a trine and sextile after all. I do see this day as bringing up perhaps the same issues that you started the month off with, but this time, if you integrated the lessons, if you take aligned action around the new things that you learned and the way you want to show up around that same situation, then you're closing off the month with a feeling of understanding that sometimes setting boundaries can bring us closer to our loved ones, that it can really make a connection that's much more meaningful and much deeper. So wow, Leo, if you didn't get the gist, relationships are quite important to you this month. And not just the seventh house type of relationships where you're relating one-on-one to another person, but really the deep, intimate things where you sort of speak the greatest things that you're afraid of to those around you, and you get really vulnerable with them. So it might feel intense. There might be a lot of conversations with somebody close to you in your life, but you got this, Leo. And I hope you enjoyed this forecast. I hope it helps bring you a little bit of comfort knowing what's up ahead. If you want to make sure that you catch the March forecast as well, then make sure you subscribe. I hope to see you again soon.